Alabama's in, much to the chagrin of a lot of college football fans and one college football fan base and program entirely. Welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. Joining me today to suss out everything related to the SEC championship, the college football playoff, Kalen DeBoer, Ty Simpson, Heisman Trophy, everything. There's a lot to talk about between now and when Alabama faces off against Oklahoma in Norman on December 19th. Out there in Oklahoma, a rematch. Can you believe it? Helping me to do that, Matt Scalici, our producer and also star of SEC Shorts. You can see him weekly on camera. This guy, he's a producer, he's an actor. Matt, quite the production this week.
Yeah, I would say generally you never want me to be playing your team in an SEC short because typically that means we're not trying to make your team look cool if we do that.
What are you saying? Your typecast is a certain type of team?
I would say
program?
I tend to play characters that don't have it together, that really look like they have let themselves go somehow. And look, I think we'll get into this. I think this is not the Alabama of the past where they're coming in top of the world, feeling confident, looking their best going into the playoffs. This is an Alabama team that their clothes don't fit right. They're they haven't shaved in a while. They're just looking. They barely made it in.
Wait, so tell the people who you played in this week's episode of SEC Shorts.
I do play Alabama, which is rare
Right.
for me. But that's who I am in the short this week.
You got to check it out. I mean, those guys, y'all, I should say, never disappoint. Matt's a familiar face if you haven't noticed by now. But okay, where to start here, Matt? I mean, Alabama made the playoff, but let's say a few quick words on, and the less we say, the better on the SEC championship, to be honest with you, because obviously there were high hopes that Alabama would show up to that game. That was the ask, I think, of the playoff and of the college football world, that Alabama just show up. This is a game that Alabama could afford to lose so long as it was competitive. And for the first couple of possessions, it looked like it was going to be a bit of a fist fight between these two teams. Then Georgia blocked a punt and the floodgates opened up. So Matt, Alabama loses 28-7. It's really ugly. They played probably their worst game of the season and saved it for when they absolutely couldn't have, but they managed to survive. They lived to fight another day. They make the playoff. Before we get to the playoff, what did you think of this effort from Alabama?
They definitely did not look like a team that is ready to compete against the best teams in college football. They, I think there's a lot of caveats you could put on this. There's a lot of ways to explain what happened in this game. I think injuries is one of the first ones that's going to come up. This was obviously not the Alabama starting lineup that we saw throughout October when they were winning those games against ranked opponents. This is a mash unit, as they say. These guys are beat up. The ones who are on the field, probably a lot of them are not fully healthy either, and it showed. I mean, I think you could see certainly anytime, the few times that Alabama attempted to run the ball, they just had no push at all anywhere on the field. They're missing their top two running backs, arguably in this game. I think the receivers did some nice things at times, but still some of the same kind of drops that we have seen throughout the season. I think probably the biggest area where you can look at and say something's not right was Ty Simpson. He just did not look comfortable ever. He did not look confident. I think a lot of it, you maybe can start to point to physical things being wrong. A lot of passes at receivers' feet, a lot of balls badly overthrown, a lot of sort of inability to navigate in the pocket at the same level that we have seen throughout the season. Just never looked comfortable, and I think some of those indicate that he's physically beat up. But some of it wasn't fully physical. Some of it, I think, was mental mistakes, and that's harder to explain. But maybe not. Look, maybe it ties in. If you are physically beat up and you're not doing, your body's not responding the way you think it will, I'm sure that gets to you at a mental level at a certain point too. But yeah, certainly Not a good performance for Ty Simpson. Not a good performance for special teams, as we have noted on this show before, Ben. It's just not an asset to this team in any phase of the game. Uh, Giving up big returns, not being able to protect your punter, um, and really got away with, I think, some sloppy handling on punt returns too. So the defense is about the only thing you can point to and say you probably couldn't have asked a whole lot more of them. And I know they gave up 4 touchdowns, but I mean, they were put in some terrible positions in this game, and I think still did admirably considering the corner they were painted in.
They sucked in this game. That's what happened. Alabama sucked in this game. And you're right. You can't point to the defense. Yes, they gave up 28 points, but the context matters here. How did Georgia score each of those touchdowns?
Mhm.
First off of a block punt, then off of an interception, then off of a punt return where they brought it into Alabama territory, and then after a turnover on downs at the Alabama 11. Alabama's defense gave up fewer than 300 offensive yards against Georgia. It's not like Georgia was this juggernaut. They were working with short fields. Alabama lost the field position battle in the first quarter of this game, and then for the rest of it, and they just had no fight in them on offense. That's what I think you wanted to look for as style points in a game like this. Thankfully, style points for 12 regular season games is what got them into the playoff. And those 4 straight wins against ranked opponents and the gauntlet that is an SEC schedule. But they had to show fight in this game, and they didn't show enough of it in 2 phases of the game. And you're right, special teams has been bad. Cole Adams has been pretty reliable in terms of fielding punts, but he nearly dropped it and turned it over again in that
Mhm.
game. Gave Alabama terrible field position at that point. It's not all on Cole Adams. I think he's been pretty solid all year, but offense and special teams did the Alabama defense 0 favors. And when Alabama really needed to show up, they absolutely sucked. But thankfully, for 12 games, they proved that they were among the nation's best teams, elite. Nobody thinks that at this point. But when Alabama's great and when they're at their best, and hopefully they'll be totally healthy come December 19th when they're playing Oklahoma, they're a team who can beat anybody. It's just, can they put that together consistently again the way they did during the first half of the season? Nobody thinks that, but this was not a good indicator, like you said at the top of the show.
And I'll throw this in here too, Ben. I mean, I think the the players did not execute in many areas of this game. I also was very unimpressed with the game plan. I did not think that the coaching staff put this team in a lot of situations to succeed. There are a lot of easy to say in hindsight. There are a lot of calls that I don't think were the right calls. They almost didn't feel like calls that were being made by a coaching staff that felt like it needed to win this game. And I can't I look, I don't want to speculate, and I'm not a football coach, and I'm certainly not an X's and O's expert, and we've had some of those on this show. I was very confused by this game plan. I think you're limited obviously when you're so beaten up and you're just not going to be able to effectively run the ball. But we've seen this coaching staff in the past find ways to work around the weaknesses of this team in certain situations, right? Even against Auburn, uh, in a game where their backs were against the wall. That's an absolutely must win. If they don't win that Auburn game, they're not in the playoffs today. And I think there was a lot of conscious thought you could see being put into the adjustments made throughout the game as to how the offense was being called. It didn't look that way to me. It did not look like, when things were going terribly, that this coaching staff made adjustments to protect Ty Simpson, to put the offensive line in a better position to have some success. And look, sometimes you do just get your ass beat in a game, but I would have liked to see some fight from the offensive staff, from the coaching staff, in terms of choosing when to get aggressive, obviously, but making some aggressive calls, trying to give your team a shot to win this game. And it just didn't feel that way watching it.
They're flat. That's the word that kept coming up in my head. But Matt, I mean, like, no, we're never going to understand X's and O's the way that coaches and players who actually did this and do this do. But one thing even dopes like us can understand is situational awareness, right? When you might consider making a change, when you might consider doing anything strategically. And look, I think Kalen DeBoer typically says the right things pre, mid, post games. I think he's a really smart guy. He's a grown up in the room. That's something I really appreciate about him in the world of college football coaches. I disagreed with one thing he said post game, where he talked about going for it on 4th and 2 from their own 11, which when they didn't convert with a terrible play call and a terrible execution, that led to an easy Georgia touchdown to put them up 28-7. And Kalen DeBoer said, "Look, we're trying to win the game. This is the SEC championship." Everybody knows you're not winning the game at that point. And at this point, you do need to prove something to the committee. And I mentioned earlier about showing a little bit of fight, and maybe that's what Kalen DeBoer considers showing fight late in the game. You're trying to win even from your own 11. But at this point, you need to make it look good. You need to convince the committee that there's not as much of a gap. There's not a 21-point gap between Alabama and this team that you beat earlier this year, but you made it easy for them. And if you're going to go for it, actually give your team a chance, right? And maybe that play works 100% of the time at practice, but it looked terrible. And maybe it's on Ty. Let's stick with Ty for just a second. So if Ty's the problem, that's it. It's over. And,
Right.
and Alabama can't win. And Ty has been brilliant this year. And this guy has been a legitimate Heisman front runner and has been the reason Alabama has been as good as it's been and why they're in the playoff picture to begin with, and now why they're in the playoff. And we saw flashes of the old Ty in the Iron Bowl, and everybody was hoping that he would just come back to being that guy again, but he wasn't. He played arguably his worst game of the year. I thought it made me think about something that Nick Saban would say about Bryce Young sometimes. It's not all on Bryce Young. The quarterback gets too much of the blame. He needs better support from the players around him. Obviously, you're working on depth at tight end and running back. Offensive line's banged up. The wide receivers, namely Ryan Williams, who actually made a cameo in this game, they've struggled as of late. So it's not all on Ty Simpson, but without a doubt, he's the engine of this team other than the defense at this point. And so if mentally, physically, I don't know if he's hurt. It could be one of those things. Matt Stahl said last week when we were asking like what's wrong with Ryan Williams, and he just said, I don't know. It could be one of those things where by the end it's like Ty Simpson was playing with no arms this year and nobody even noticed it. That's how bad the injury was, right? Like he could have a spinal fracture for all we know. So I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's on the field, and if he's available, then it looks like he's healthy enough to play. And if he's not, and if he's totally healthy or whatever, the coaches seem to think that he gives them the best chance to win right now. Otherwise, they would put somebody else in. So maybe it is mental, maybe it's physical. Maybe we'll find out at the end of the season. But Alabama lives to fight another day, Matt, and they're getting another opportunity here against a beatable team, one that a lot of people think that they should have beaten in Tuscaloosa when they lost by 2. When I think that this Georgia game was like an even worse version of what happened against Oklahoma, where you had offense and special teams just completely screw the pooch and put the defense in a completely horrible, precarious position. It was even worse against Georgia because I don't even think Georgia looked that dominant. I think Georgia came to play a similar game that you needed Alabama to. They came and did everything they needed to do. They were consistent, if not dominant, and Alabama just completely fumbled the ball. So it was a disappointing effort. It was disappointing to watch, but now it just doesn't matter. It's like we always joke all the time, Matt, about the 2017 Iron Bowl. It didn't matter, right? Now you have an opportunity to make the SEC championship game not matter because you're in the playoff. And if you get past Oklahoma, you go to the Rose Bowl and you take on number 1 Indiana. But wow, the shoe is on the other foot, as they say, Matt, where Alabama normally is just waltzing into a playoff situation, and now they're scratching and clawing, and Indiana's the one that's waiting on the hunters at this point. Very strange. Alabama's still playing like the hunted, though, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I think, look, you now enter this situation where I think a lot of competitive people, when they lose a game, especially a close game, you have a tendency to go back and look at it and say, if I would have just done one thing differently, if I could have made this one adjustment, maybe we could have won the game, right? And maybe that's not how they look at that Oklahoma game in Tuscaloosa. Maybe they look at it and say it was a freak thing. We just happened to have these terrible turnovers at the worst possible time. I would hope that they've since looked at it and said, if we were in the same position again, here's what we would do differently from a preparation standpoint, from a play calling standpoint. You know, this was a game we could have won if we'd done X, Y, Z differently. Because Oklahoma, I don't think they're going to suddenly find an offense, right? We've seen the Alabama offense play much better than they just did this weekend. So the question is, what adjustment do you make so that this Alabama offense can succeed against an Oklahoma defense that got the better of them last time out? Strategically, they were throwing a lot at Alabama. You know, the game plan now for everybody that plays Alabama seems to be just throw pressure at Ty Simpson and they can't do anything. So you've got a chance here. You've got a chance to diffuse that bomb, to say, actually, we can still beat you if you do that. We have ways around this. It's, to me, entirely on the coaching staff. I think that this game will be a great litmus test for Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb to say, nobody gets us twice, right? If we get another shot at you after you figure us out, you're not going to do it again. And I think they need to show the team that, and I think they need to show the fan base that, because right now, they're, as good as this season is, and they've made it to the playoff. And Ben, before the season, we said they have to make it to the playoffs this season, or they will lose the confidence of people at Alabama. They made it. So the question is, can you get to that next level of instilling confidence in the Alabama fan base and say, we know what we're doing, and if we get an opportunity to make an adjustment to something that we did wrong, we know how to do that. We know how to fix things that are broken.
Yeah, well, it reminds me, you said they made it, right? They limped in. It reminds me of your buddy Josh Sneed on the SEC shorts whenever he has like a cast and like a black eye and a bandage, and he's like, well, we made the playoffs, so this counts, right?
The
It's
Walking
like
Dead walking into the playoffs here. But yeah, but look, it's
in.
a body of work thing. And as
In.
you said, there's strategy. There's a season long amount of strategy, right? And really what a lot of us said going into the SEC championship is, all you got to do is not get blown out. Well, they didn't do that. They did not follow that one strategic point. They kind of got bailed out here by the committee. And so what are you going to do with this opportunity? Are you going to self-assess and say, we got to do some things better than we've been doing them for the past month? We have to change what we're doing. Just because we made it to the playoffs is not a vindication of every decision that we've made this season.
Call Barrett Jones or somebody who played on the 2011 and 2012 Alabama teams where they lost regular season games and they were out of the BCS mix. They were done. And it took these miracle upsets for Alabama to sneak back in, and they got another opportunity, right? And so you're right. Like, what are you going to do with this opportunity now that you're in? Because you're absolutely right. Kalen DeBoer deserves credit for taking this team to the playoff. And maybe it's an unfair expectation where the minimum should be the playoff. That was the goal, and they're in. And we said going into the season, and we'll do a report card at some point about how we really feel about Kalen DeBoer's job in 2025. But going into the season, it's be better than 2024. And they won more games during the regular season, and they made the playoff when they didn't the year before. So it's a marked improvement this time. So,
but I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation to have some. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that he can win this playoff game, right? If it'd
No.
be a different situation if they're getting a nightmare matchup, but they're other than Alabama, Oklahoma is arguably the worst Power 5 team in
This is
this
the
playoff.
best possible matchup they could have gotten
Yeah,
in the playoff. It's a revenge game. It's against a team that they know that they can beat. That game was really close, and it could have gone either way. Oklahoma made the plays they needed to win because of Alabama's mistakes. But it's like, can you clean up those mistakes and dominate a team the way that you probably could have? Like, I don't know whether Brent Venables is just a bad matchup for Kalen DeBoer, like philosophically, schematically, but we'll find out. I mean, golly, Matt, if Oklahoma beats Alabama again, they're one of the handful of programs historically that has a winning record against Alabama. And is Alabama going to let them dig the hole even deeper for them historically? That's neither here nor there, and nobody really cares, historically, like how much ground you make up. They got to beat them now. And what an awesome opportunity. I think Alabama can win. Vegas obviously thinks so. I mean, they're minor favorites, but they're favorites on the road against a really solid defense and a really sucky offense. But that offense did enough because Alabama coughed it up and handed them the ball in situations that put enormous pressure on Alabama's very good defense. Alabama's defense is very good, maybe even elite, but they can't even stop that when they're put in situations where you just hand them the ball deep in Alabama territory. So if that's something that Alabama can avoid, they'll be very competitive. So I think it's an awesome opportunity for Alabama. Honestly, much better than what was initially projected, them going to College Station and playing in that place. That place will be rocking for when Miami comes to town. And so I'm glad it's Miami rather than Alabama. Not to say that Norman won't be loud and intimidating. That's going to be a tough Friday
it's
night
going to be
atmosphere.
really,
Could be
really
snowing.
cold.
Could
Yeah,
be
well,
snowing.
could be. It is a place where there's nothing to block the tundra wind from coming in. So I mean, this is probably the coldest atmosphere this particular Alabama team has ever played in. And look, for an all passing for a very, very pass heavy offense, that could be a disadvantage for Alabama. We'll see.
Well, we hear that Jam Miller and Josh Cuevas and Xavier Brown and the rest of the Alabama team pretty much. It's a joke that the injury report read like a Dickens novel going into the SEC championship game, but it seems like it's going to be much shorter this time around. And then, look, they're out of time and they're out of excuses. This is it. They're in the playoff. It's win or go home, literally, and that's where you want to be. And I'm excited to watch it and glad for them. And I think it's a really, it's good to be back in the playoff, Matt, is my point here. Because when you're out of it, you really feel it, especially when it's 12 teams.
I see, and I look. Here's the thing: I don't know how much it helps, Ben, because now it's 12 teams. So it doesn't. I think it doesn't feel look of the many things wrong with college football right now. I don't think that making the playoff automatically makes you feel like you have had a successful season anymore. Because there's a big group of teams that could end up better off than you at the end of this season. And that's where look, we can talk about Alabama fans being ungrateful and spoiled and all this, but that's what this fan base is. They need to feel that they are one of the handful of best teams, best programs in college football every season. And if they're not, something has gone wrong and needs to change. And I think winning a playoff game is going to put them they're going to feel like they're headed in the right direction at least again. I think you lose this game, you're talking about 2 straight seasons, really 3 going back to Saban's final season, where this fan base has to enter a long offseason with a bad taste in their mouth. And these guys don't like that. These guys do not like feeling like things are not going well, and they're only going to tolerate it for so many years.
No, look, I don't blame Alabama fans for being frustrated.
I don't either.
When you live a lifetime of the success that Alabama fans have seen, whether they live through both the Bryant and Saban eras or just the Saban era, like whatever, we're coming off of 17 straight years, really 16 straight years of being in the national championship conversation or actually winning national championships. It's okay to have that standard, that expectation. It's fine. That's part of the culture in place. And Alabama wants that too. Kalen DeBoer wants to be a part of that record, that history in college football. That's why he came to this job when Nick Saban retired. I mean, it's a tall order as a coach to fill those shoes, but he wanted it, so let him go get it. But I don't think it's unreasonable at all. But Matt, I mean, I think the larger conversation is, and I don't want to necessarily get into the conversation of if Alabama loses, because we went into the Georgia game asking that question. Well, if Alabama loses, are they in? Well, I mean, at this point though, like what it hot seat's not the thing I want to focus on necessarily as much as it is like Alabama's feelings about DeBoer, about the program, about Ty Simpson for that matter, because when Ty Simpson wasn't playing well on Saturday night, a lot of Alabama fans who expressed themselves online and on social media were done with Ty Simpson. They were ready to bench him like they saw Jalen Hurts get benched and like they wanted Jalen Milroe benched in 2024. So fairness isn't the right concept here, but how would you describe how Alabama fans are feeling? They appear to be on the edge, whether it's their team, their coach, their quarterback, these things that are in the playoff, got them there and have had tremendous success. But the second that it looks like things are teetering, they're ready to move on.
Here's where I mean, look, reasonable people can disagree about certain aspects of this, but here's what I think is a reasonable expectation for any fan base is to feel like we have a coaching staff that understands where the program needs to be and understands how whether we are currently there or not, right? I know that sounds very basic, but I think you want to feel confident that your coaching staff has a plan. Doesn't mean you're going to win every game, but it means whether it's short term or long term, they know what needs to be done to succeed. You don't want to look at your coaching staff and say, "I just don't think this guy gets it." That's when you're in trouble. So I don't know that Kalen DeBoer has fully sold everybody at Alabama on that yet. I don't think everybody has 100% confidence that because Kalen DeBoer made this decision, he must know what he's talking about. He must have. And I look, there's people who thought Saban was making incorrect decisions. There weren't the majority, but I think that is where the essence of job security comes from for a coach, is that everybody believes that whether we win every time or not, whether every play works or not, this coach makes more good decisions than bad decisions. He gets it. He has a plan and a vision for what this team's supposed to look like. And you can't really lead a big group of guys and a program and a fan base unless they have that kind of faith in you. So that's where I think I don't know that DeBoer has reached that tipping point quite yet. I think there is a lot of even fans that really like him that have bought in more than the average fan. I still think there is this room in their brains for doubt, for saying, I don't know if this guy gets it. I don't know if this guy understands how to get us where we want to go. And I mean, you fair or unfair or any of that. I think that is the same. That is the requirement that every fan base has for their coach. That they may have different requirements for how far along you should be at any given time, how much they should be accomplishing, reasonably in a given season. It's just the question of, do I think this guy knows what he's doing? And I just don't know that he's quite sold everybody on it yet. Winning a playoff game in the first round, I think, would go a long way to getting him that benefit of the doubt from a lot of people at Alabama that still have questions about him?
Matt, I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's made that clear. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the position in the first place. He wouldn't have a 10-win season in the SEC. He wouldn't have these strong recruiting classes that he's had. He wouldn't have these wins against Georgia. He wouldn't be undefeated against Auburn and LSU, et cetera. Kalen DeBoer knows what he's doing. I think at times, again, situational awareness becomes an issue, especially when it comes to performing when you absolutely must perform, whether that's against Georgia in the SEC championship, when you could afford a loss, it just has to be a competitive game, or whether that's against unranked Oklahoma last year, unranked Florida State to start this year. Games that you absolutely have to win. They didn't absolutely have to win in Tallahassee this year, but in Norman last year, the playoff was on the table. In this past weekend, the playoff was on the table. And you could say the playoff's on the table every single week. That's the point of the regular season. But situationally, and it turned out that they didn't need it, and the College Football Playoff Committee had made up their minds about Alabama at number 9. But the narrative going into this was Alabama has to win this game, and if they lose, it needs to be by a decent margin or else. And Alabama didn't show up and execute that. And they're lucky that the committee felt a certain way and had googly eyes for the top rated team on television all season in 2025. And now they're part of this big television show now that's going to draw a lot of viewers. But I think that's the concern about DeBoer at this point. Can you motivate your team when it matters most? And we know that he can coach up the team during big games. Again, we've seen Georgia 2 seasons in a row. There have been big SEC games this year, and Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and certainly Kane Womack and his coaching staff have risen to the occasion. But there are these very specific moments of the season where they have not. They've come out flat. They've fumbled the ball. And you just have to hope that they don't do that again moving forward, because this is a fan base, as you pointed out, they notice these things. And those things make this fan base matter than other fan bases for other programs. And they will react in an unkind manner. That's the problem with college football now, is that people react too quickly. Kalen DeBoer's still building this program. But look at these other coaches that have been fired at these other programs too soon in some cases. And there are other instances where it just didn't even make sense. But that's the way it's going to work. That's the way it works everywhere else. That's the way it's ultimately going to work here, is if you're not winning enough, even if you're winning 10 games a season, even if you're winning an SEC championship, is it enough to keep you around as the head coach in Tuscaloosa? We'll find out. And again, that's a different conversation for a different day, because they're in the playoff and they get the opportunity to play for a national championship right now. And Kalen DeBoer deserves credit for taking them there this year when they didn't go there last year. That is improvement. And let's see if he can continue that upward trajectory.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I think you talked about the fans want to see situational awareness from a coach. I think fans have to have some situational awareness too. And in this, look, I think for the most part, this SEC championship game can be easily forgotten. As you mentioned, it can go down in the books as one of those losses that didn't matter ultimately. But that only really happens if you can give them something good to hang on to. If their lasting memory of this season is a positive one. And I think if they can, I hate to call a playoff game a must win for a coach. And I don't think this quite that dire, but I think that the line at which people will be able to look back on this season as a success is reaching the Rose Bowl. I think if you can get this team to the Rose Bowl, you're playing with house money at that point. But I don't know that I'd say that before that point. I think they have something to prove and something that they need to show this fan base in this game against Oklahoma.
Well, narratives are created out of thin air, but it's not for nothing, right? I mean, then it becomes you're 0-2 against Oklahoma. You couldn't win the big one when it really mattered. You made the playoff, but you didn't win a playoff game. It's like one and done in March Madness. It's a little different, obviously, but it's Ty Simpson regressed. Kalen DeBoer is a quarterback guru, an offensive guru, and the best quarterback in the country suddenly looked ordinary. All of these things are going to come crashing down. But again, if they win, then then they won't. But it's tough to like paint these doomsday the pictures of these doomsday scenarios. But we've seen it at other programs, and Alabama is obviously different in the way they've always done things, but their standard is different too. And it seems like they'll get, like I said earlier, they'll get frustrated for much less. But here's hoping, and we'll talk more about the Alabama Oklahoma game within in the next several episodes in the next couple of weeks, because there's going to be a lot to dissect. But Matt, I want to ask you this one question real quick, because there has been a lot of fervor. There's been an uproar in terms of the college football playoff format. It's 12 teams now. A couple of years ago, it was 4 teams. A few years before, decade before that, it was the BCS, where they tried to pick the top 2 teams to play. So, what if you could pick? If you could pick your postseason format, and don't say anything outrageous like we shouldn't have a championship game like our good friend Matt Stahl did.
I don't agree with Matt Stahl at all on that.
He's a total maniac.
Terrible take.
I told him that to his face. But if you could pick one, let's say out of those 3, or at least the way that we've seen national titles determined in our lifetime, which is your favorite? And if it could be permanent, which one would you pick?
Easy for me to say, I guess, because I covered this one kind of from start to finish of its existence. But I thought the 4-team playoff was probably about as close to getting it right as you can get. I think that, they avoided the sort of traps of having automatic qualification by winning some random group of teams that has nothing to do with quality whatsoever, no standard for how good that team has to be. I think it also 4 to me feels like a realistic number of teams that can win a national championship. Was there ever a year in that 4-team era where the 5th team had a real shot at winning a title? Maybe. I don't think it outweighs the fact that now we are putting teams in positions where they're having to win, multiple games to at the end of the season, when they are statistically least likely to be a fully healthy team. I actually think that this version of the playoff is less fair to the best teams in college football. I think we're less likely to have the most, whatever definition you want to use, best team, most deserving team. I think you're less likely to get that outcome in a 12-team playoff. And I know we've only done it 1 year so far, and it seems to have been the best team last year. But
they were the 8th seed, though. They were the 8th seed.
And look, they've made some adjustments this year where the first 4 seeds don't go to conference champions automatically anymore. And I think that was a good adjustment. To me, 4 teams is enough. I think it's fair, and I think it gave us, for the most part, very good semifinal games and final games. There were some blowouts for sure, but I think ultimately it delivered what college football wanted from a national championship process, which is we want to see 2 Titans going head to head in a national title game. Very few bad national title games in the 4-team era.
I agree with you, Matt. I think 4, if you must have a playoff, worked. I get why they expanded it, and that's not to give James Madison a shot or Tulane a shot at winning, because a 9-3 team has no business competing for a national championship at the end of the season. And you could say that about James Madison and Tulane with respect to those teams too. The fact that 10-2 Notre Dame and 10-2 Miami are whining about getting in or being left out of the playoff, or Alabama last year at 9-3 were whining about strength of schedule and being left out of the playoff. You don't have no business playing for a national championship anyway.
No, ultimately, if you're the last one that gets left out, you can complain about the process, but you really have to at least put some of the blame on yourself, because you're never again ever going to have a situation like Florida State, where they went undefeated and still got left out. That will never happen again in this system. And
Yeah.
so if you are that team that gets left out, let's say you played a whole season, and the only good teams that you played, you lost to. And maybe you also could have given yourself another shot by playing in a conference championship game, but you don't play in a conference because you think that's stupid for some reason. You
But even
you
then,
It's on you. It's on Notre Dame that Notre Dame didn't get into the playoff this year. They
yeah,
can
but even in the NFL though, Matt, where it's like divisional, a team that's 7-9 could get into the playoffs and make a run to get to the Super. They didn't earn that, man. You went
No,
seven
I
and nine
agree.
during the regular season. Same thing with college football. Now, I'd go back to BCS. Let the computers decide. That way, we don't have to listen to some committee tell us these like absolutely ridiculous reasons they
Yes.
put a team at number 9 during week
Less
12 or
we,
week
we need
11 of
we
the
need
season.
less explaining and justifying, and more just tell us who made it. Tell us what do we have to do to get there, and if we do it, we get in. That's
The
that's
one
that's what college football teams deserve to be able to be told, right? And I think if I know ESPN loves their ad revenue. The weekly playoff ranking release show is doing massive damage to the reputation and the buy-in from college football fans of this playoff system. They have got to stop doing this show. It is not it is ultimately, it is going to cost them money in the long run if they don't stop doing this stupid show where they explain to you why they ranked it the way they did, and then the next week they give you an explanation that has nothing to do with the one they gave you the week before. It is hurting the playoffs to have this weekly show where they have to make up a reason why they made an emotional decision.
it's hurting college football, not just the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the more they expand these playoffs, it's like you already spilled it, and now you're just smearing it on the wall and smearing it on the floor.
It's
The
Kevin
more
it's
that you
Kevin from The
expand it,
Office trying to pick up the chili pot. That's what
right?
that's what the committee looks like every week.
But look at us, we're saying fewer teams, less money. You remember Jerry Maguire? He got fired for saying fewer clients, less money. Like we totally understand, but to go back to our buddy Matt Stahl, he was right about one thing. It's all about the regular season in college football throughout our whole lives. That's what made it so special
Yep.
because each week mattered. Each week was a playoff game. And once it came down to the final two, it was that much more exciting. And you really knew who the best team in the country was. Now, does that make it top heavy? Yes. Are the rich always going to get richer in a system like that, the way that they did during the BCS and even the four college football playoff format? Yes, but looking back now, it was better than it is right now. Last year to me was a dud. It was a total dud, especially the first round. I love the home games in the opening rounds. I think that's really cool, and it creates a really unique atmosphere. And I look forward to seeing how it plays out this year too. But beyond that, I didn't really enjoy the product, frankly.
No.
So
I think they need some good games this year
yeah.
in this playoff. I think they probably will get more good games this year. We'll see how it goes. But I think
Well,
ultimately, like uh, like you said, Ben, this is a this is a golden goose that has been laying those golden eggs for the colleges involved for decades and decades. And like a lot of things that are producing a lot of money for people, these guys just seem to have this instinct to kill this goose. They're doing everything in their power to do it, but I think people still really love this. And if we ever reach a point where where Alabama here, if we ever reach a point where Alabama loses a regular season game at home and the fans walk out of the stadium and they say, who cares? Doesn't really matter. That's when it's over. That's when you'll know. But for now, it hurts still to lose those regular games. It's a disaster. Everybody's waiting for Monday for the call-in shows to hear the overreaction to it. As long as that's happening, college football is still alive.
Speaking of which, let us know what you think. Do you like the 12-team playoff? Do you like 4 teams? Do you like the BCS? Do you like it when goons like us and the Associated Press decide who the champion was at the end of the season? Sound off in the comments and find Beat Everyone wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We're out there. We want to hear from you, though. He is Beat Everyone producer and star of SEC Shorts. Go seek out the latest episode of SEC Shorts. Matt Scalici. Matt, thanks again.
Thanks, Ben.
I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. Thanks, everybody.